Good late Tuesday, early Wednesday meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center right now, giving you a look at those temperatures across the region. If you're watching live, it's around 1 o'clock or so, and you can see here what we're dealing with. And it's not too bad as we're watching across that region. You can kind of see here 55 toward Keystone, and over we're at East of Starkwood, 54 degrees. And you can kind of see here just 50s for most spots on the board, 48 though toward parts of Jacksonville as you're looking out there towards Cecil Field. So that kind of gives you an idea of what's going on in this northern area in Jessup. They're also at 48 degrees there in Wayne County. But, 50 is that predominant storyline here. I know we're going to still be watching that fire risk. We do have a rip current risk too, even though, it's getting warmer. So you probably want to think about going out to the beach, something like that. But, the Atlantic beaches, I know we have that rip current risk the Jacksonville office, Weather Service office is concerned about. So we're just going to go ahead and continue to monitor all of that here as we're just keeping you guys updated. But, weather's not too crazy. It's still, it's going to warm up, though, as we're looking at the local area, and then we're going to have a cool down. That is a little bit crazier, as we're right now, though, in this, short term for this Wednesday. It's not too crazy. Not talking about much rain, but we have to, again, watch that fire threat here as we're tracking things, so dry. We're not expecting much precip here, unfortunately, as we look ahead there and toward that timeline. We have very little, especially in north central Florida. I know on Sunday we did not want severe weather. We really didn't get severe weather in, areas off toward, Stark and Gainesville and the like. But we also didn't get here and start that much rain. On my rain gauge, only a little over 4/10. It's 4.5 tenths that total that we're talking about here. So less than a lot of folks, and not enough, by any means to, get rid of that drought, not even close. I know we did have that core day on Monday, which helped things in terms of some of those puddles stay around a little longer. But now we really have to be careful, have to be vigilant. Have burn bans still in play, and they could be in play for a while to come. So we do have to just be kind of mindful of that. But in terms of, that storyline, we do have warm, maybe near record highs later on this week. And then we're going to have some rain around storms. There will be a strong storm potential here and there, more so Albany area, Tallahassee area, probably, and then down into, especially north central, northeast Florida, because we're not even expecting much rain down in this part of the viewing circle. But as we look ahead to our next week, near freezing temperatures, there may be at least frost probably Tuesday morning. So you have to protect those plants again by at least next Tuesday morning, if not next Monday morning. So up and down pattern, but no big weather maker in terms of like some type of tornado outbreak headed our way locally. We're not anticipating that, but we'll watch that stronger storm threat here towards Saturday. There could be a few warnings. Even an isolated tornado in theory couldn't be ruled out, but we're too early on that. I know we're going to talk more about what happened on Sunday in a few moments, but I do want to take it out toward the west here because we have a national weather story to talk about, and that's in California. We actually have a severe thunderstorm warning there right now towards Santa Barbara County. This is, 10:07 p.m. Pacific time as we're looking out there. We have some severe storms in that part of the country, and, that we've been paying attention to over the last day or two. And one right now here at 10:08 p.m. Pacific out there, Santa Barbara County. A severe thunderstorm line. They're located from 14 miles east of, it looks like one of the different spots there. I'm going to try to pronounce it Santa Ynez to near Refugio State Beach. It looks like that would be your pronunciation. Moving east at 35 miles an hour, 70-mile-an-hour wind gust, briefly tornado also possible there on Santa Barbara, California. They don't get severe weather out there too much, but they may get more rain lately out there. It's a situation where a little bit of energy, if you look real close in toward the water area there, you can kind of see that energy about 500 joules per kilogram. We're not only talking about stuff out there, but they've been getting more wetness lately. We've been getting the drought. It's kind of reversal of some of the years past where they've had all the fires out there and we, end up having a lot of rain. So that can, deal with different patterns. We have La Nina or Nino, things like that, and that can definitely have an impact on some of those different patterns here as we're looking across the country. You're looking at the different pressure patterns and the like. So again, that's kind of what we're dealing with there. As we go ahead and zoom back over, you can kind of see how calm it is. Now, as we look toward Thursday, there is a chance of severe weather in toward the Midwest here. Let me see if they've sent out the latest SPC outlook there. Okay, they just sent it out. I didn't want to put it in the graphics because I wouldn't thinking that we were going to have, that graphic here, the most updated one when we were on, and that is the case because they have sent out an update here just in the last couple moments, in fact. So I'll try to just put this up on the screen here because I think it's worth noting for your Thursday. It's not a huge threat at this point, but it is something that's a national storyline. It kind of is an indicator, as we're looking toward the weekend, maybe kind of seeing a threat uh, kind of get a little bit closer toward home. So we'll just have to kind of track things here meteorologically, obviously, and the like. But let me go ahead and just share the screen here. The SBC Day 2 Convective Outlook just in here. If you're watching live in the last few moments, it's just coming in literally there at 12 o'clock Central Time, 1 o'clock Eastern Time. So just coming on in, and you can see here we're watching things on the board. Before I take it over to the tornado risk, this is the categorical outlook. We're going to update these here pretty soon. Storm Prediction Center, some of the different aspects of these outlooks, but that's something we'll get into when that, matters more when that's actually happened. But they're going to change how they do some of this, but not a lot, but some. A slight risk there. You can see parts of Indiana, back that up, parts of Illinois, parts of Indiana, parts of Ohio, parts of Kentucky there, as we're looking and as we're tracking things. So that's something that we're going to be paying attention here for. Again, you see, if you should see my mouse, you do see my mouse on the screen there, probably Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky there, parts of those states under a slight risk of severe weather on that Thursday. And then we're going to go ahead and see that tornado risk, and that's for parts of Illinois, parts of Indiana, Ohio, and a little bit of Kentucky in there. So you have areas, if you look here, you have areas there like Indianapolis, Louisville, Evansville, even Illinois, some spots as well. As I look, I know our system here, on the screen, which is just showing off the SBC information, it's showing the towns, the biggest towns involved in the 5% tornado risk. That's where you're more likely to have a tornado watch, like what we had here locally on Sunday. But you have Indianapolis, Evansville, Bloomington. That's talking about Indiana, Terre Haute, Indiana as well, and then Hamilton, Ohio. Those are your biggest towns under the little bit greater tornado risk. And then Columbus, Ohio, where Ohio State University is, St. Louis, Missouri, Cincinnati, Ohio, as well as Louisville, Kentucky. It's right on that edge. I mean, I see it on the map. Part of Louisville probably really in the 5, but it's close. It actually says 2 for them, and in Lexington, where University of Kentucky is, they're in that 2% tornado risk there. You have Bowling Green as well in there, Western Kentucky University. So that's something they're monitoring there, I'm sure, as well. Paducah's in that 2% if you look carefully there on the map. Haven't had too much up there lately because it's been, just so cold and the like. And not now. We're starting to transition a little bit with the meteorological pattern. So starting to talk about those areas again here on that national level. But again, in terms of that severe weather potential. So we'll continue to monitor that. Continue to give you guys the very latest there on that situation. I know in terms of some of that forecast modeling here, let me go ahead and load the GFS here to 0Z, and you'll be able to see here what we're talking about in terms of some of these weather stories as we're looking at things and as we're tracking. You can kind of see this is your Wednesday, but then we're getting to that Thursday here. You can kind of see some of that accent there toward parts of Indiana, Illinois, and the like. And then as you can kind of see Ohio there, and then as we get toward Friday, you can see some of that trying to get closer to home, but it's taking its time, maybe toward North Alabama, give or take. And then as we get towards Saturday, there, the 21st, you start to really see that trying to make some headway here, but it's weakening on out as it does itself. But maybe a rogue warning. This is early Sunday morning. You see how very little rain we'd have closer to home with this, according to this look at the scenario. So yeah, that's not something that's too evident. That's 10 a.m. Sunday morning, 1 p.m., 4 p.m. as we're tracking things here and the like. So yeah, definitely important to keep an eye on here in terms of the overall situation. Just trying to always be mindful here, obviously, as we're keeping you guys informed here. We're just trying to be very much vigilant here as we're seeing here the different temperatures and the like. Even warmer down towards South Florida right now, 71 degrees around Miami, 70 there around West Palm Beach, and that's an idea here of what's going on So definitely some warmer air to west. Again, it's a little bit different pattern. Again, we have that severe weather in California out there. Again, they're not, used to that too much. 12-hour rainfall estimates out here. You see some of these areas that are getting upward about an inch or so in towards some of these spots around the Santa Barbara area, around Ojai there. You kind of get the idea. And in San Luis Obispo, you can see some areas there an inch and a half in that purple in the last 12 hours. So cooler there right now, though, 48 degrees there as we're looking, but you kind of get the idea there, the meteorological patterns. So again, I'm just trying to keep you guys up to date. Trying to keep you guys informed there, of course, just trying to give you guys an overview of what's going on here meteorologically. But now let's kind of review what happened, give you that overview on Sunday, because we could have had a much more dangerous day than we did. We still had some damage, though, and this is a look at the storm reports there, looking at the SBC storm reports for that Sunday. I know the W's indicate wind reports here, and we had quite a few of them, but not toward the east. We thought this would strengthen as it moved more to north central Florida. We had a little bit of uptick, though. We got real lucky, to be quite honest, because what happened is we had a bunch of the lighter rain, just the overall setup kind of take away the storm energy for the actual areas that be more capable of severe weather. But we had an uptick in toward Lafayette County. We even had a tornado warning, not a confirmed tornado, but that one WI circle there, we actually had different reports in multiple communities there, some wind damage concerns in Lafayette County there on that Sunday. Like, it wasn't just Mayo, but some areas in and around with some issues with some of those trees there on the lines and the like. In fact, I know I'll go ahead and kind of just pull up some of that information here as we're tracking, just to kind of read off of that. And as we look back there on that Sunday, on that 15th of February 2026, we did have a report there in Lafayette County, trees down on wires, and not just Mayo, but also the community of Day and Hatch Bend there. So the thing was, we had the weakening. You see how we lost a lot of the deputies. We had the wind energy. Maybe it wasn't, we had some of the parameters not beat it together as much, but then we had that uptick there. We had that uptick, and if we wouldn't have had, all that weakening out with the rain out ahead, keeping it suppressed, we would have really had to take off, and we could have had a lot of damage across north central Florida here, because that we don't generally get that when you have the weekend. And normally things will just kind of fall apart, and that'll be it. But it actually tried to take advantage of the very favorable parameters, that were around. If it could have got, the pattern wouldn't have had all that rain out ahead of the main accent, but because of all that formation of that, the weaker accent suppressed the accent that could have really had a higher ceiling. So we got lucky. We didn't get as much rain around Stark as we wanted, obviously. Only 0.45 inches there on the rain gauge, but we could have had quite a bit of severe weather acts in, the form of multiple tornado warnings, many severe thunderstorm warnings. A lot of those W's all across here, Gainesville and Stark and Jacksonville, and probably even a T or two for a tornado, because those parameters were there. I know last week for a while we weren't really talking too much about the severe threat. We thought Western areas like what happened, but then the Storm Prediction Center, I saw it too, about the same time in the modeling, the high-res modeling, so when some of those parameters were getting up there. So even though we knew the cooler Gulf waters could help weaken things, we had to give you guys, that warning. We had to err on the side of caution here. We had to, we can't just kind of keep information from you if there's a legitimate of enough chance here of that danger. We have to let you guys know about that here. So that's why I really ramped up coverage, because things could have really escalated here. The parameters were there. It's just we had suppression there in terms of the atmospheric scenario from keeping these storms from reaching their ceiling. They could have really got up there based on the dynamics that were in play here toward north central Florida, but it didn't happen. We're very thankful for that here. But you definitely have to stay alert. But we're not trying to just hype things up. We're really trying to be careful. We've had too much problems over the last few years with Helene and with, of course, our hurricane there in the form of Idalia too. We don't want to just needlessly hype stuff up here. We're not trying to just needlessly hype stuff up here in toward the weather center, but we try to be careful. I know we did have a situation there. Last year we had Hurricane Aaron. Some folks are trying to say, well, we got to watch it in Florida. But the timeline said that we don't need to necessarily watch it at that point, except for maybe coastal hazards and stuff away from the U.S. per se. Our area didn't need to really pay attention, but there was a little bit much hype on that last year for a bit. But with this, we can't. We had time to watch that. If the threat would have increased, we'd have let you know. It didn't. With that last year, way into the east here of Florida. But the point about that is with this. So these situations they can change literally. Within a half an hour. Pretty much did increase and then decreased again. That Lafayette area, that area stayed together for a little while on radar, but started to, lose its punch there ultimately as it got toward, areas further from Columbia County and the like there. So that, we didn't even have the report. So obviously it wasn't actually verifying further downstream, it seems. But as we're looking and as we're tracking, we can't just, it's not like we have a few days or a week or two to watch it. I mean, this can change so quickly. Going into a weekend like that, we have to let you guys know. We have to err on the side of caution if there's a legitimate chance. If there's not, well, we'll let you know. Hurricanes, we have way more time to watch. Like what we had last year, we didn't hype that up for a reason. But with this, we were really trying to stay, lower with our wording. But we had to be in line there with the Storm Prediction Center based on them mentioning the threat of strong tornadoes. That was a legit possibility based on how things really ramped up there in Lafayette County. And if we wouldn't have had all that rain out ahead, we'd have had big problems, I think. But because we did, that was very lucky and very much, helpful. By the way, no more W's on this map as we're looking like Dorado, Cal. I just zoomed in some so you can see all those reports. There were quite a few in our western counties, so let's just go over some of those. Decatur County there were quite a few trees blown down there across Spring Creek Road. That was at 10:59 a.m. 1 mile northeast of Bethany. A car was even blown off the road, and then at 11 a.m. we were at Hitchcock and Gulf County, just outside of the area. A phone pole and tree were blown down next to the State Road 71 area near the Ace Hardware. At 11 a.m. in Bristol and Liberty County, trees fell there on to an area there that we were looking at. We were tracking some dog pens in that area of Bristol, and the dogs were luckily not harmed. Reported via social media. At 11:02 a.m., 1 mile southwest of Reynoldsville in Seminole County, Georgia, a tree down across Collie Hill Road. And then at 11:20 a.m., 3 miles northeast of Mount Pleasant in Gadsden County, tree down along Mount Pleasant Road. 11:23 a.m., Wetumpka in Gadsden County lost a big tree and numerous branches blown down in the Wetumpka community. Again, this is not where the parameters were really able to maybe maximize in that, they did to their full potential, but to the east we had higher potential, but because of the way the convective mode aligned, it really didn't align in terms of that axing out ahead, the lighter and out ahead suppressing things. We got lucky because this was not the highest potential. At first we thought it would be. As we were looking at the high res model said no, we would have a lot, more concern if things came together around to the east, but they didn't. So even though we reached the potential to the west of the worst case, even though it wasn't as bad as the worst case to the east, we didn't hardly get too much at all because, we didn't get there. If we would have reached the worst case toward North Central Florida, we'd have had even more W's and probably even a couple T's on here for tornadic damage. We got lucky, folks. As we go ahead, but we need more rain. We're not lucky in that department. We need a lot more rain. But, we looked there at some of the different communities, like areas there in Gadsden County there, like Wetumpka, Midway in Gadsden County. A tree on a line resulted in a power outage for the Brickyard substation via Talcott information. And then in Grady County, Georgia, 2 miles northeast of Wiggum. That was around 11:46 a.m. Grady EMC reports a broken power pole affecting 109 members. At 11:54 a.m. in Leon County, a tree down on North Meridian Road at Gardner there. That's in the Tallahassee area, give or take. You can see some of the deputies there. We had Mitchell County, Georgia, Sales City area. Reports of several trees down about 3 miles west of Sales City about 11:56 a.m. 12:30 p.m. in Wakulla County, debris blown there, it looks like, in the power lines and resulting in a power line issue and then power outage, of course, 2 miles southeast of Wakulla Springs. 12:30 around Woodville in Leon County. A tree on a line resulted in a power outage in the Woodville area, and then getting a few hours later at 3:12 in the afternoon around Keaton Beach, we skipped things for a while. We had another report, not just the one in Lafayette, but after we went off, this came in a delayed report where in Keaton Beach, and they've been through so much hurricane trauma the last few years, not 25, but 24, Debbie somewhat, but then especially Helene, just terrible. And then, of course, Idalia, terrible as well. But Keaton Beach, this was, small sliver, very, very small sliver, but still impacting some family there, something like that. At 3:12 p.m. in Keaton Beach in Taylor County, a wash house, including clothes, washer, dryer, all thrown into a pond. Not fun to hear that. So they still had some vigor to these storms, but they could have been much higher. There was a much higher ceiling they did not reach, thankfully, as we were moving east. But then at 3:57 p.m. around the Midway community in Lafayette County, we were talking about some of those issues, and then specifically we're talking about trees down on wires in Day, Mayo, and Hatch. Been there around in the 3:57 time range. We were watching that tornado warning situation out there. Of course, we were on water wall for that. We were talking about it before, during, and after that tornado warning here on Cloud Weather and all the different platforms. So very important just to be very mindful here of these type of situations as we're looking and as we're tracking things here. All the different platforms, keeping you guys safe and informed as we go ahead, though, and now look toward the drought monitor. And we had some rain this week's update, though, probably not going to be much different. The rain last week, here, as we were looking toward that, I guess really say this beginning of this week, but with the holiday and everything, wanted to call it last week, but Sunday, that rain here, it looks like extreme drought here is probably going to stick around, unfortunately, and then just got to hope we don't start getting exceptional here, but this is not a good picture. We'll have another update on Thursday. It'll be through early Tuesday data, but yeah, the rain that we had, it helped a little, but just for a short period of time, as we really have that very significant wildfire concern. Until we get a whole bunch of rain, we're way behind, so you got to be alert for wildfires and having to evacuate from those, unfortunately. You just want to take action immediately. Just leave as soon as evacuation is recommended by fire officials to avoid being caught in a fire, smoke, or road congestion, as a delay could cost you your life. These are from California from last year. They're not having to deal with that as much now out there. Did in Oklahoma, though, unfortunately, on that Tuesday around areas like Woodward, Oklahoma, some big wildfire problems. But just make sure you take the initiative to stay informed and aware. Listen to your radio, TV alerts, as well, that come across maybe on your phone for announcements from law enforcement, emergency personnel. Sometimes I just be knocking on your door telling you got to get out. Times, of the essence in these situations, too. So keep that in mind. Just ensure your emergency supply kit in a vehicle there that you have, that you're ready to evacuate in. And then also, there's insurance documents there, and your passwords, things like that. Just have those ready to take with you, of course, in a situation where you have to evacuate. So as we go ahead and look there to Georgia Drought Monitor, you can see extreme drought situation for Georgia or South Georgia counties as well, just not good at all. And we'll have to watch when we have higher winds and lower humidity. The rainfall forecast next 7 days isn't that good either. You see only about a tenth to maybe, as we're looking a little bit further west, we have a little bit more on here. But, really a 1/100th of an inch to a tenth of an inch towards Dark and Jacksonville on average, according to this. Southeast Georgia, a little bit more, maybe a tenth, and then towards southwest and south central is a 1/4 inch. Tallahassee area, you see it sitting from about a tenth to a quarter, so that's not near enough. A lot of areas toward north central, northeast Florida, southeast Georgia got a 1/2 inch to 1.5 inches on Sunday. Here in Stark, we weren't so lucky, a little less than a 1/2 inch. But interactive editor at cloudweather.com/radar. You do see more rain to the north there, in north and central Alabama, North Georgia there, northwest South Carolina, that precip time in North Carolina. Quite a bit there in Tennessee, not overwhelming generally, but definitely we could use that down here, and we're generally not going to get it, but there will be, as we showed you in Illinois and Indiana and the like, there'll be a, severe threat up there, a legitimate one. Some of that will probably translate into even North Georgia, North Alabama there as we look ahead in the days to come. So that'll be important to follow from the national perspective. Not a huge threat, but, sometimes these ones can be sneaky here this time of year, where if you get the wrong set of circumstances, you could all of a sudden get a strong tornado that, even though the threat and the storm cover didn't just overwhelm, and things can kind of catch people off guard. So, yeah, stay tuned. make sure you're ready to move to a more sturdy structure there. If you're in something, like a vehicle mobile home, just be inside your site boat structure away from windows if you're under a tornado warning there. But clutter.com/radar gives you an interactive look at things when we're not on the air. And then as we look here, you see our covered area. We're always watching things, always tracking things here, giving you the latest event over every tornado warning storm that moved through the 62 counties since 2019 here. We were rolling you that one as it was in Jackson County. We were watching that evolve there, and had the box pop up, and we were on pretty quick there as we were watching it. You're really winning the focus in our local counties, similar to Decatur, Gadsden, and we knew we'd have a long day ahead of us. So we took a couple extra minutes just to make sure we had everything right to get on there before it moved out of Jackson County into our covered area. That first tornado warning of the day on Sunday, we had 3 that I recall. That one, we had one further up in southwest Georgia. And then we had the one, of course, for Lafayette County there, that, very south, especially in Mayo, where we were paying attention. But that vicinity there, definitely always important to keep you up to date here. That's what we do here at Clouds Weather. We keep you guys informed. I had that 7-day forecast here for you in 60 seconds. So stay tuned. And again, just make sure you look at that, because those temperature trends will be important to watch for. I'll be back in 60 seconds. I'll see if you guys have any questions for me while we take this quick break. In the last half decade or so, our area and the region have been through a lot. Stay safe, but it's going to be memorable. I was there around 4 p.m. to document them. Life-threatening situation here. So, again, that's the storyline there. Oh, I think we just had another power blast. Another power blast. Sometimes Bradford County is a tough spot to see a spin-up tornadoes, so we just want you to go ahead and be inside and away from windows. Can't even completely rule out a quick spin-up tornado, so things have started to escalate here. Please take shelter. This is going to cause a lot of damage. Radar-confirmed tornado in southeastern Georgia. We're seeing areas there around Perry bear the brunt of this, coming into these communities and ravaging them. That's why we got to get you guys out. You got to run from that water. You got to evacuate. You got to follow these orders. This is as serious of a situation I've seen. This is the eye wall. This is where some of the worst of the weather is. When hazardous weather threatens, trust Clouds Weather. Back with you now here in the Weather Center, looking at that 7-day forecast that I promised. You can see 78 there on that Wednesday, 80 on Thursday, mid-80s here late in the week. As we're looking, some areas will be even warmer. It'll be 85, 86 there. That's just crazy to think about. Crazy to be looking at here. Definitely warm. Downright hot, maybe some folks would call that. That is near record type of heat. So we'll be tracking that. I know the Bradford Fair will be coming up pretty soon. I'll be watching that, forecast for that as well. Still kind of early to get into those details. You see the cooler air coming in, after we have that chance, lower end chance of strong to severe, especially further north and west. We're talking about cool conditions here early next week, maybe downright chilly, maybe near freezing, maybe a freeze in some areas Tuesday morning. Those outlying areas, definitely, if the winds calm down, you're clearer with the skies, you might get upper 20s in some spots. So just be mindful of that. Bear that in mind. I know the frost potential here, something I'll be paying attention to. Obviously, that comes to fruition. That can be harmful to some plants. So make sure you start protecting those. Some of them might have not made it to the cold weather season we've had, but if they made it through, you don't want it to kind of catch you off guard here. We're going to cool back down again early next week. So keep that in mind here in the Weather Center, where we could have a frost to freeze in a lot of spots, especially Tuesday. We'll see about Monday morning, but Tuesday morning definitely more likely there. But you see mid-80s, 84, 85 possible some spots. A little bit cooler Sunday because we've had that boundary come on through, that system come on through here, obviously helped to cool us down. But we'll have to watch the wildfire threat too. Another thing we'll have to watch for, I know, is fog. We'll have to watch for that as we look here at things and as we track them. I know smoke sometimes can merge with that, and that is really problematic. So really, just be mindful here. Some of our different communities can have this in this type of pattern. We're a little bit warmer than, or quite a bit warmer than we're expecting on average, and just letting give yourself extra time to reach your destination. I know it's been so cool, but then you get so warm, and that can play a role in some things. The water's still pretty cool in the Gulf. You have the temperature on the ground, it's still kind of cool. So just make sure your vehicle is as visible as possible. Other vehicles, by using a low beam headlights, leave plenty of room between you and the vehicle in front of you. So yeah, definitely something to be mindful of here as we're looking, as we're tracking here We're just trying to give you guys the latest here. Just trying to keep you guys up to date on everything here in toward the weather center. So, yeah, definitely be mindful of that fog potential as we look ahead. We're going to go ahead and just, be paying attention to that. Just be very vigilant with that. That can be dangerous, catch folks off guard. I know one thing that did work well, the teams around North Central and then just North Florida, talking about the Big Bend, doing great there tonight. FSU basketball winning. They're coming back against Boston College. Gator basketball winning against South Carolina. Talking about men's basketball. Then we had baseball and softball for both schools win as well. So that's exciting here in early 26. I know FSU will be going out to Arlington, Texas for a tournament here this weekend. 3 games, 3 days. So that's exciting there. Playing the likes, if I recall, right here, Auburn, Nebraska, and Michigan. Not sure about the order on that, but it is online. You can find it there. But yeah, 3 games Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I don't think they're necessarily a champion, but just kind of, play everybody there to get that excitement going here early. College baseball 2026 here for FSU and the Seminoles. So that's so exciting, obviously, as we're tracking here, trying to keep you guys up to date on all of that. All right, as we're giving you guys the very latest. So, now, we do look at the year and we do need to touch on a more serious topic, though, as we look toward Jacksonville and Duval County, something that is more serious. I want to send my best wishes out to WJXC Channel 4 Morning Show anchor Bruce Hamilton. He announced on Tuesday that he is battling cancer there. And Roy wanted to keep him and his family, my thoughts and prayers, hoping for the very best, and that he gets cured of that cancer there and that things, go a little more positive direction for him. He's been at the station, for decades, covering that morning shift. Before that, he's ABC 25 in the late 90s, starting up their news operation there. And before that, he was in markets like Orlando and Philadelphia. So Bruce Hamilton been on the air a long time, many decades. In television news, television broadcast there, television journalism, and all those different newsrooms, keeping everybody up to date. There's different TV markets in the country over the years and the decades, and definitely listen for the very best for him and his family there. Again, Bruce Hamilton for WZXC Channel 4, battling cancer. He announced Tuesday on the morning show in Jacksonville. I know I've been on the air since I was very young, and on Channel 4. Wasn't quite here when he was on ABC 25, but when he's first starting out on Channel 4, I was here seeing that. He's been on there for decades, and hoping for the very best here as he does battle cancer. And this is something that, it's very serious. And Roy want him, to, know that everybody, in the community's with him, and just, again, hoping that he, has a very positive outcome here as we look ahead in the timeline. Let's go ahead and kind of zoom out now and make that transition, and you can kind of see here as we're looking. You can see 53 toward Tallahassee, 55 toward Keystone. We're 55 right now here east of Stark. Back to Rose, a few degrees here since midnight. As we're seeing things here in the ward, that area. I know sunset's now getting later, 6:20 p.m. And that can have a small effect on your temperature trends too. I mean, in the coldest parts of winter, you have a little bit less daylight, but in the, getting on and on, you get closer to summer, you have more daylight. And, that's something that can definitely play a role here in some different trends here as we're looking across the area. The overall pattern's a big story, but just in terms of those micro scale trends here, 7:05 is what I have for the sunrise this morning for this February 18th, 2026, and then 6:20 p.m. that sunset here. So definitely, important to keep in mind as those days are getting longer. Well, that time change coming up next month, I believe it is. Let me get the date for that for you guys. I know it's always that exciting time of year in March when we have all the things going on, like March Madness. I know, yeah, March the 8th, it looks like, is when the time change will be. So not too long away. You have Gator Nationals, you have the Players Golf Tournament there, you have SEC, ACC, tournaments in men's college basketball leading into the men's tournament. You have women's NCAA basketball tournament as well, college baseball in full swing. I mean, I'm sure I'm not leaving something out there that's important. But we'll come across that as we get into March. And the fair is normally that time here in Bradford, starting off a little earlier than that this year. at the end of February, but I think it's still kind of getting through there as well. The overall timeline does extend there, into that first week of March and the like. Yeah, let me double check that. The Bradford Fair is the February 26th time frame to March 8th, so shorter February, but that's a couple weekends there. So get excited about that. The Bradford County Agricultural Fair coming up there as we're looking February 26th through March the 8th. So yeah, that's kind of coincide there, as we're looking toward that time change and that time of year. So just kind of intriguing here to look at everything and track things. People want to take advantage of hopefully warmer weather and not storms, but to be completely honest, we could use the rain, even if they do impact some of the different events. We definitely could use the rain here across the area. We need the rain very, very badly. So just keep that in mind here as we're looking at things. And we, hopefully, somehow we can get it to work out so the outdoor events aren't impacted by that rain, if we can get some too much, but we get it at other times, but we just got to have the rain no matter what. And we certainly don't want, air quality concerns during some of the, more important in terms of, just the amount of people going to the different events, outdoor events. We certainly don't want air quality impacts from wildfires. So we just need the rain here as we're looking, but there's not a whole bunch in the next 7 days here. I'm not seeing a whole bunch even in the long range models. I know I'll look at the GOZ, ZFS here a little bit more here as we're looking at GFS there, that 0Z, trying to say that all kind of fast together, but yes, that's not a good picture at all for the most part. I mean, at the end of it, maybe something, but you can't really rely on the end of these runs. I mean, getting through about March the 4th there and something like that. We're only talking about maybe a little over 1/10 of an inch in Gainesville, close to a 1/4 inch in Jacksonville, 1/4 inch in Tallahassee, 1/2 inch in Albany, 1/2 inch in Waycross. So that's not a positive picture at all. So we'll see if that changes. We got to have the rain, or we're going to be, March could really be a very volatile month here with wildfire if we're not careful. So we got to have that precip. We got to have it here, folks. Just even if it does, unfortunately, have some more severe potential like we had on Sunday. Just hope we get lucky with the severe threat and get more rain than we expect. Sunday here on Stark, the severe threat wasn't, something that really materialized here, but we also didn't get quite as much rain as we were hoping for, only, 0.45 inches on that gauge. So, yeah, the European model looking through, and the 12Z version of it through early on March the 4th, it's just slightly heavier, about 1/3 of an inch for Gainesville, 1/3 of an inch for Tallahassee. Albany is 9/10 of an inch. Waycross there about 1/4 inch. Just it's a kind of storyline. Orlando, Jacksonville about 1/4 inch or so. It's not what you want to see. We got to have that rain. We got to have it very badly, or it's gonna be something that's not fun around here. But I do want to thank folks for tuning in here, like Thomas over on YouTube. I appreciate everybody tuning in and watching and trusting me. Same for that Sunday coverage here and leading up to that. I know we had a higher potential. We got lucky. Most of us did, in our areas further east because we didn't reach the high end. To the west, they didn't get so lucky in that they did reach their max, but it wasn't as bad as the max could have been to the east. But we had damage, of course, around Tallahassee here and there. Not terrible, but, sparse there, here and there. And then Fayette County is, we had quite a bit of reports that, that could have stayed intact, organized further. We would have really had problems in the Suwannee, Columbia, Union, Baker, maybe even Bradford, in that one area. And, talking about Duval, maybe Nassau. But we got lucky on a lot of that. We did get some rain, but now we just have to keep watching for wildfire concern here in the days and weeks to come. So that's going to do it for now. Have a great night. Stay safe. Back late Thursday, unless something requires us to come on sooner. Hopefully no wildfire concerns do between now and then. Again, be alert for those because those can sometimes be so localized that by the time the word really gets out, in toward social media and toward just statements from emergency officials there on a wider scale, it's already, caused issues and really been, something that's, things can change within minutes, moments on that very, very hyper local level. So keep that in mind and stay alert. Also beaches, East Coast beaches, I know we're watching out for recurrences. You might want to get in the water with things, warming up, and before the spring breakers come and the like, and you just got to be careful because recurrence can be deadly here too. So just trying to do anything the best you can here. This can be a good time of year, but we have to just, be careful with the wildfires and the burn bans. You gotta follow those burn ban orders. They are very important to follow because otherwise we could have very nasty situations evolve here. And obviously you could, be facing legal consequences too, because those are enforced there, and taken very serious because of the hazards that just even little, little things that get out of hand can turn into a big problem very quick. A spark even can turn into a big problem. The cigarette butts can turn into a big problem very quick. So, with the very dry conditions we're experiencing, it's got to be really vigilant. But for now, have a great night and stay safe out there.